If you've been to your local grocery store recently and felt a wave of anxiety hit you when you saw the price tag on a loaf of bread or a dozen eggs, you're not alone. You're not imagining things. You're living through the slow-motion collapse of America's biggest food retailers. And what's worse, no one in power is doing a damn thing to stop it. They're not even admitting it's happening. This isn't just about store closures. It's about the disintegration of everyday normalcy. It's about parents putting back produce because the apples are too expensive.
If you're still watching, you know the truth matters, so join us, subscribe, and keep it alive.
It's about seniors standing in half-empty aisles of a Dollar Tree that used to serve as their lifeline. It's about single moms clipping Kroger coupons only to find the store they've gone to for 20 years is closed. And all of it ties back to one root: reckless trade policies that punish the wrong people. Let's talk real numbers. Over 1,200 major grocery stores gone in less than 2 years. That's not a coincidence. That's a consequence. Tariffs that were supposed to level the playing field are now choking the supply lines that kept America fed. Tomatoes from Mexico, up 32%. Rice from Southeast Asia, up 40%. Fresh herbs, tropical fruits, even basic canned goods, hit with price surges that make it nearly impossible for stores to maintain stock or keep prices stable. And what do we get in return? Are American farmers seeing windfalls? No, they're getting crushed too, by rising fertilizer costs, export barriers, and machinery shortages. So now not only are we not getting cheaper American alternatives, we're also watching both sides of the food chain suffer. That's what makes this moment so painfully absurd. We've broken the system for everyone: retailers, producers, and most devastatingly, the consumer. Now let's pull back and ask the bigger question. Why are the giants falling first? Because the bigger you are, the more vulnerable you are to massive disruption. Walmart has thousands of suppliers across multiple continents. When tariffs slap 25 to 30% on goods coming from 5 different countries at once, it doesn't just nudge prices upward. It detonates the entire cost model. Suddenly, the one thing Walmart built its empire on, being cheaper, isn't true anymore. And when Walmart can't be cheaper, it doesn't just lose customers, it loses purpose. Kroger, with its legacy of affordability and Midwest loyalty, was already operating on razor-thin profit margins. When costs explode and labor strikes loom due to understaffing, something has to give. And it's giving now, in the form of shuttered locations and empty shelves. Families who used to stretch $100 into a week of groceries now find themselves choosing between meat or milk, never both. And Target, America's middle-class sanctuary. Gone are the days when you could pick up organic kale, grab a sale on detergent, and still have enough for a cute candle in the home section. Now, the food section is shrinking, the inventory feels erratic, and stores in urban centers are quietly cutting hours or closing early due to logistics issues no one can quite explain. But the quiet tragedy might be Dollar Tree. When Dollar Tree gave up on the $1 price point, it signaled something far more profound than a price increase. It signaled that even the most stripped-down, bare-bones business model for serving the poorest Americans was no longer viable. What happens when the store built for the working poor can't afford to serve them anymore? What message does that send? And don't even get started on Amazon Fresh. Remember all those promises? Frictionless shopping, next-day delivery, AI-powered efficiency, and a revolution in grocery retail. But look around. The stores are eerily quiet, full of machines short on staff. And the same lettuce that cost $2.99 2 years ago is now $5.49, if it's even in stock. People didn't sign up to scan their faces and wave their phones just to pay more and feel less connected. You can't automate trust. You can't digitize empathy. This isn't a logistical problem. It's a social one. Grocery stores are more than distribution centers. They're part of our routine, our social lives, our identities. They're the places you bump into neighbors, catch up with familiar cashiers, let your kid pick out cereal on a Saturday morning. When that disappears, it leaves more than just hunger. It leaves a hollow. And while politicians squabble over protecting American interests, what's being protected exactly? Is it the dairy farmer in Wisconsin watching his equipment rust because no one can afford his prices? Is it the truck driver whose route was cut because Kroger shuttered a warehouse? Is it the senior citizen trying to live off a fixed income while the price of potatoes just jumped again? Who are we protecting? Not the consumer, not the worker, not the retailer. We're protecting a narrative, a fantasy that we can wall ourselves off, slap on some tariffs, and become magically self-sufficient. But in the real world, it doesn't work like that. Not with the way our economy is built. Not with the deeply interconnected systems that bring bananas from Costa Rica, rice from India, avocados from Mexico, and seafood from Vietnam to our tables. That supply web doesn't unravel cleanly. It tears. And now we're seeing what happens when it snaps. Meanwhile, smaller, local solutions are trying desperately to fill the gap. Farmers markets have doubled in attendance in some states. Non-profit food exchanges are popping up in church basements and parking lots. Volunteers are driving groceries to shut-ins in rural towns. These aren't fringe stories, they're survival strategies. Because when the system fails, communities step in. But here's the brutal truth. Local solutions alone won't be enough. Farmers markets can't replace 4,000 Walmarts. Volunteer deliveries can't fill the void of 1,000 closed Dollar Trees. If we want a real fix, we need to rethink the entire food distribution framework, how we price, import, protect, and sustain the system that feeds us. That starts with policy, but it doesn't end there. It ends with empathy, with leadership that understands that groceries aren't luxury items, that food is not a political football, that every time we raise the cost of basic imports, we're not just taxing China or Mexico, we're taxing the single mom buying baby formula. We're taxing the retired veteran with diabetes trying to find affordable greens. We're taxing the teacher buying cereal for her student's breakfast club. This isn't abstract. It's everyday survival. So if you've noticed the stores are quieter, the aisles are thinner, and the prices are higher, know that you're not alone. Know that there's a reason. And know that unless this trajectory changes, what we're facing now is just the beginning. Because when food becomes a luxury, civilization becomes unstable. And no amount of spin, branding, or political posturing will feed the people. Let's be brutally honest. America is not just facing a grocery crisis. It's facing a crisis of identity. Because when a nation built on abundance and choice starts rationing food access through economic gatekeeping, you're not just watching shelves go empty. You're watching the illusion of stability shatter in real time. Let's talk about dignity. Not politics, not policy, dignity. The kind you lose when you're standing in front of a refrigerated case trying to decide between buying eggs or keeping the lights on. When you put back ground beef because the price jumped 40 cents in a week. When your kid wants apples and you have to say, let's wait until they're on sale. That's not budgeting. That's slow-motion humiliation. And it's spreading like wildfire across so-called developed America. And here's the kicker. This isn't hitting people in rural outposts or crumbling inner cities only. It's happening in suburbs. It's happening in neighborhoods with SUVs in driveways and dual incomes. Because this wave doesn't discriminate. It swallows everyone who doesn't already have one foot in the luxury tier of grocery shopping. If you're not shopping at Whole Foods with a trust fund, then guess what? You're feeling it. Even the middle class, long the engine of American consumption, is being priced out of their own grocery stores. Target was their haven. Not too cheap to feel low-end, not too expensive to feel indulgent. But now, the food aisles are shrinking. The selection is erratic. The fresh produce is overpriced and bruised. And worst of all, the quiet sense of betrayal lingers in every cart. That feeling of, this used to be our place. What happened? You want to know what happened? The so-called America First trade policies that were supposed to empower local producers have instead choked off competition, hiked input costs, and set off a domino effect of layoffs, closures, and panic pricing strategies. We didn't build local strength, we imported local scarcity. And the people paying for it are the ones least equipped to absorb another financial hit. Now let's zero in on a demographic that's often invisible in these discussions: the elderly. What does grocery instability mean for a retired woman on Social Security, living alone, managing her meds and mobility challenges? It means her local Kroger's pharmacy is gone. It means the store where employees knew her name closed overnight. It means she has to beg for a ride to the next town just to get groceries, where she's forced to navigate self-checkout machines she doesn't understand while feeling like a burden. Her world just got smaller, colder, and lonelier. And we haven't even talked about rural America, places already 2 or 3 store closures away from becoming full-blown food deserts. When a Dollar Tree vanishes from a small town, it's not just a store closing. It's a disaster. It's the only place many folks could buy essentials without driving an hour. It's the only place that accepted SNAP with dignity. It's where seniors socialized, kids picked out snacks after school, and parents made paychecks stretch just far enough to survive. But now, with 1,000 plus Dollar Tree and Family Dollar stores closing, those fragile lifelines are snapping. And once a rural store closes, it almost never comes back. Not enough foot traffic. Not enough ROI. Not enough strategic value. You want to talk about value? Try telling a diabetic who now has to drive 40 miles for groceries that their health doesn't have strategic value. See how that conversation goes. And while we're being honest, let's call out the condescending narrative floating around the media. That this is just capitalism adjusting. That these are just market corrections. That if people really cared, they'd shop local or eat less processed food. That's not just tone deaf, it's cruel. Because the average American doesn't have the time, transportation, or disposable income to handpick their groceries from 4 different specialty stores across town. The truth is, we didn't just lose access to food, we lost access to choice. And with that, we lost a piece of freedom. Freedom isn't about waving a flag. It's about the ability to walk into a store and buy what your family needs at a price you can afford, from a place that treats you like a human being. That's real lived freedom. And it's being stripped away one shuttered grocery store at a time. So what happens next? What happens when the giants fall and the cracks widen? Do we let billion-dollar tech companies swoop in and replace local grocery chains with drone deliveries and checkout-less solutions? Do we really want a future where the only way to buy milk is to scroll through an app run by a data harvesting monopoly that treats food insecurity like a product opportunity? Because that's exactly where we're headed. Not toward resilience, but toward consolidation. Toward a dystopia where 2 or 3 megacorporations control every bite you eat. Where grocery shopping is no longer about nutrition or community. It's about compliance, data, and maximum extraction from your wallet. It doesn't have to be this way. Across the country, small but powerful resistances are forming. Cooperative groceries are gaining traction. Community-supported agriculture, CSA programs are filling gaps where chains have pulled out. Faith groups are starting food delivery networks for isolated seniors. Even public libraries are becoming food pickup points in some areas. These are more than temporary fixes. They're visions of what an empathetic, human-first food system could look like. But let's be real, these grassroots efforts need funding. They need policy support. They need protection from being swallowed up or priced out by tech-backed grocery ventures that care more about branding than nutrition. Because here's the hard truth. No amount of community goodwill can outpace systemic failure without structural change. And that means looking the tariff elephant in the room straight in the face. If tariffs are breaking the supply chains that feed the working class, then they need to be revisited, not scrapped completely, but redesigned to support both domestic producers and international partners in ways that keep essential imports affordable. It's not protectionist to destroy access to tomatoes in January. It's sabotage. We also need massive reinvestment in domestic logistics infrastructure, cold storage, trucking networks, fair labor conditions, so that when we do try to source locally, we're not relying on broken systems. And we need policy that prioritizes food security as national security, because what's more essential than feeding your people? The longer we let this decay continue, the more normalized it becomes. The more it settles in that food is now a tiered privilege. That some get variety, freshness, and dignity, and others get processed leftovers and self-checkout frustration. This is not the America we were sold. It's not the one we deserve. And if you're still reading this, if this is hitting you in the gut the way it hits at the checkout counter, then maybe it's time to stop seeing this as just groceries and start seeing it as what it is, a national emergency. Because when the places that fed us, employed us, and connected us start to vanish, they take something bigger than merchandise with them. They take trust. They take belonging. And if we don't act now, if we don't rethink, rebuild, and reinvest, we won't just lose more stores. We'll lose each other. You can feel it the second you walk in. The store isn't dead, but it's not alive either. Shelves are half-stocked. The air is quiet. No music. No chatter. No kids begging for cereal. A few employees roam, distracted, overworked, and too drained to even fake a smile. This is the modern American supermarket. Not a haven, not a community staple. Just a place to endure, to survive. And if you're lucky, to still afford groceries for the week. We have entered an era where shopping for food has become a source of dread. Not because of scarcity, there is still food, but because the prices no longer make sense. Because there's no rhythm, no stability. You don't know what it's going to cost. You don't know if the milk will be expired. You don't know if the frozen vegetables will have ice burn or if the chicken will be $14 a pound for a family-size pack that feeds 2 people. And this is what's most insulting. They tell us it's temporary. They tell us to be patient, as if being unable to afford basic nutrition is a scheduling conflict. No, this is not about patience. This is about a collapsing system being dressed up as economic growing pains. Let's talk about Kroger again, once the soul of Midwest grocery retail. The place your grandmother shopped. The place you went as a kid for the free cookie at the bakery. Today, Kroger has become a battlefield. Seniors on fixed incomes stretch loyalty cards and cling to shrinking discounts, while the company quietly closes underperforming stores. Stores that only underperform because the very policies that affect trade and logistics have made those locations unviable. Tariffs on staples like canned tomatoes or powdered milk from Mexico, China, or Canada jack up back-end costs, which means the stores can't keep prices competitive, which means traffic dies, which means they shutter. And that small-town Kroger that served 12,000 people? Gone. Gone like Target's once bold push into affordable groceries. Remember that phase? The bright red carts rolling through produce aisles, half Whole Foods, half Walmart, all ambition. That dream has evaporated. Not because it didn't work, but because it couldn't compete. Rising costs. Lower margins. No room for error. And when the store closes, it doesn't announce it with dignity. One day, you just drive by and see brown paper over the windows and a typed-out sign. Thank you for shopping with us. That's it. That's the burial ceremony for your neighborhood's access to reliable food. Dollar Tree was a lifeline. Laugh at it all you want, call it cheap, but it saved lives. Parents making $9 an hour could get cereal, pasta, juice, diapers. Retirees without transportation could walk to a Dollar Tree and feel some control over their grocery bill. That control is gone now. The fixed $1 pricing model couldn't survive the tsunami of tariffs on low-cost goods from Asia. That's not just a business failure. That's a policy-induced tragedy. Over 1,000 stores shut down. For many communities, that was the last grocery store within reach. And what about Amazon Fresh and Whole Foods, the future of food? Tech-slick, cashierless, smart fridge monitored, branded as the utopia of modern nutrition. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Food is emotional. Grocery shopping is human. It's tactile. It's trust-based. You build routines, faces you recognize, people who say hello. When you rip that away in favor of iPads and surveillance sensors, you lose the soul of the experience. And now, even Amazon is slowing expansion. Because you can't program warmth. You can't code loyalty. You can't AI your way out of a broken food system that fundamentally disrespects the people who built it. Now, let's widen the lens. What does this all mean on a national scale? It means a generation is growing up learning that food insecurity is normal, that stretching meals with starches and skipping breakfast is just part of the American rhythm now, that shopping is supposed to hurt, That the price of dignity is $6.99 for eggs and $4.50 for a loaf of wheat bread. It means the myth of the American supermarket as a place of comfort and security is fading. The big, gleaming aisles, the choices, the freedom to browse. Those were symbols of a functioning, middle-class society. And now, we have a nation of stores pulling back into digital ecosystems, closing physical locations, centralizing fulfillment, and leaving entire communities behind. It also means that the trade war we were promised would bring jobs back has instead pushed food further away. Because in real life, the tariff hikes didn't magically create farms and factories overnight. All they did was inflate the cost of importing what we already needed. No one's building tomato canneries in Ohio. They're just raising prices on imports from Mexico and telling Americans to figure it out. Meanwhile, China, Canada, Vietnam, and the EU are securing new trade routes, building resilience, and keeping food costs stable. You want to talk about strategy? America bet on leverage and ended up with higher prices and shuttered stores. And no, it's not just because of inflation. Inflation isn't what closes the Dollar Tree. Inflation doesn't choose which Kroger to gut. Trade miscalculations, policy misfires, and short-term profit decisions made by executives who don't live in the neighborhoods they impact. That's what closes stores. And what's the human cost? What happens when millions of Americans can no longer afford to shop where they once felt safe? When the last familiar place disappears and gets replaced with a gas station convenience mart charging $9.99 for a gallon of milk, people lose their sense of belonging. Food insecurity morphs into community insecurity. Seniors become isolated. Families fracture. Kids go to school hungry. People spiral into medical crises because they can't eat well, and then they skip their checkups to pay for groceries anyway. It's a vicious loop, caused not by scarcity, but by sabotage. So what do? How do we climb out of this? We start by telling the truth. This isn't just economics, it's emotional, it's cultural, it's spiritual. We have to reclaim the idea that food access is a right, not a luxury. That grocery stores are not just businesses, they're anchors. When they disappear, neighborhoods sink. We need local leaders to stop courting megacorporations and start funding co-ops. Stop begging for another Walmart and start subsidizing food truck networks, community gardens, and worker-owned markets. We need the USDA to stop pretending this is a temporary phase and start treating it like a national food security failure. Because that's what it is. We need tariffs rewritten with humanity in mind, not just corporate lobbying. We need to rebuild domestic food logistics, train drivers, build cold storage, fund small farms. We need a version of retail that isn't obsessed with scale and automation, but obsessed with people. And most of all, we need to keep talking about it. Because silence is how this crisis thrives. Silence is how they get away with pretending that this is just how things are now. It's not. If you're still here, still reading, then maybe this conversation matters to you. Maybe you're one of the people who's seen your favorite store go dark. Maybe you've had to do the math at the register, choosing between groceries and gas. Maybe you've watched your community become quieter, lonelier, more fractured every time another sign comes down and another window gets boarded up. If that's you, you are not alone.